And Devin, I see here that the Competition Commission is keeping the case of currency manipulation by local and foreign banks alive. What's the latest there?
Yes, you're quite right, Temekile. And here's the background here. The matter dates back to 2017, where the Commission referred a collusion case involving 17 banks, Temekile, to the Tribunal. The Commission, since April 2015, had investigated price fixing and market allocation in the trading of foreign currency pairs involving the rand. So this case is quite old. 3 domestic banks, Absa, Standard Bank and Investec, were among those the Commission investigated. There were 14 international banks also implicated. There have been a string of developments along the way, including an attempt by banks to have the referral against them dismissed. Now the Competition Commission has filed a new charge sheet for rand manipulation to the Tribunal for prosecution. Well, Competition Commissioner Thembinkosi Bonakele joins me now via Skype. Commissioner, thanks indeed for talking to us. So the actual manipulation of the rand exchange rate happened, I would imagine, around 2007, 2013 in some cases. Along the way, through all the referrals and appeals, some banks have reached a settlement, yet the Commission has now put together a new charge sheet. Just put us into perspective on what's happening here.
Well, the new charge sheet or filing at the Tribunal has been necessitated by a competition appeal court ruling. After the Tribunal had made a ruling saying that we had jurisdiction over foreign banks, the banks were not happy with that, even though the Tribunal had said we could not impose a fine on them. But they were not happy. They went to the Competition Appeal Court again seeking that the charges be dismissed on the basis that this happened in New York and South African authorities had no jurisdiction. So that court in February said that the Commission needed to go back and make specific allegations and facts about the impact of that conduct on South Africa. So in other words, the court would be satisfied that even if the conduct occurred outside South Africa, for as long as it had effect on South Africa and South African consumers, those banks could be held accountable and could be fined in South Africa. So that's why we now have these substantiated charges.
Are you done and dusted with domestic banks in that regard? Because if I recall, you had Citibank, you had Absa, for example, also reaching some sort of settlement, but now your new charge sheet has Nedbank, RMB, FNB on it. So what's the situation with domestic banks?
Yeah, that's right. Some time ago, we came across information that also linked Nedbank and RMB, and we had to include them in this referral so that they themselves could also answer. We had initiated against the conduct, so in other words, the manipulation of the rand, and regardless of who does it, whoever was involved would be part of the case, and that's why we've included them here.
And then, Temekile or Thembinkosi, can I ask you, what is the status now as far as the international banks are concerned? Let's assume you have a desired outcome, Commissioner. What essentially would you be pursuing from those international banks?
I actually think the banks have no choice but to answer these charges. The charges will not go away themselves. They've tried all these years to squash them, but they are alive. In fact, some of these banks have even dismissed some of the traders that used to trade for them. In other words, they are employees, but they have never accepted responsibility for the conduct of those employees. So I think that in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, I expect that some banks will settle with us. I know that some of them want to talk, and I expect that those who do not settle with us, they will file their answer. But ultimately, this matter has got to be held on the merits.
Commissioner, is it difficult to put a value on any irregularity that happened here? And how does the layperson actually try and digest what happened with the rand in those years?
It's a little bit complex, but essentially what happens is that we trade currencies so that we can buy the currency we want. So if we want to buy things in dollars, we have to trade so that we can get dollars. Now, the value of the rand against the dollar moves up and down, and there are various factors that move it. But one of the factors is the supply and demand. So what these traders did was to manipulate the supply and demand of either the currency or the buyers of the currency in order to impact on the level of the currency. And that in turn will have a rippling effect on all sorts of people who are involved in, say, buying currency, who are travelers or importers who have to buy their stuff in another currency, and even the other currency exchange, because the rand dollar currency is a very, very important benchmark. So our euro, for example, we trade a lot with Europe. The value of that euro and the rand will be impacted by the rand and the dollar pair value. So it's a very, very important trading. And by the way, the rand is one of the highest traded emerging market currencies. It's quite liquid. So you have traders all over the world trading in rands. And that does have an impact ultimately on South African commerce and South African consumers.
All right, Themba Nkosi-Bonakele, the Commissioner there of the Competition Commission, thanks very much indeed for talking to us on your latest moves in that particular regard. Well, let's take a very quick look, Thembekile, on your indicators. And I tell you, we're having a great day on the markets. Sasol leading the all-share rally today, but banks and other local stocks are pulling up the all-share as the rand strengthens significantly. Let's take a look at that first all-share board, and you'll see what the all-share is doing there. 3.1% in the green for the all-share. When you take a look at the next slide, you'll see -2 was surging with the likes of Impala Platinum and Sibanye up by between 7 and 9%. So good day as far as that is concerned. And then there's the look that the oil price is showing, around $40 a barrel for Brent crude. We wait to see if oil-producing countries will cut production even more. And while it's a good sign internationally that the world economy is restarting, it does push the price of petrol up locally if the oil price does rise. We had Leighton Beard from the Automobile Association telling us just that a few moments ago. And then the rand, a big gainer today. It's really gaining against the US dollar and other major currencies. Look at that figure, 17 rand, 10 cents against the US dollar as we speak this afternoon. 19.12 for a euro, 21.49 for a British pound. And that's where we leave the numbers, at least for now, Thembekile.
Devin Rogan, see you next hour.